Well, welcome back. We've been looking at energy transformations here in biology, and recently we looked at photosynthesis, which takes sunlight and converts that into sugar. Well, what happens to that sugar once it leaves the chloroplasts that are in the palisade mesophyll of the leaves? Where does it go? Well, we're going to learn here that cellular respiration is going to take that sugar and convert that into a molecule called ATP using oxygen. In fact, quite a few molecules of ATP will result when we use oxygen in a process known as cellular respiration. Let's take a look. So we're making ATP by breaking down sugars. It's a three-step process, but before we go into the details, we want to be clear that cellular respiration uses oxygen, and that's what's going to make a big difference later on, you'll see. There are three steps in cellular respiration. There's glycolysis, there's the Krebs cycle, and then there's the electron transport chain. We'll take each of these in turn. So, cellular respiration is aerobic, meaning that it requires oxygen. There are other processes in the cell that do not use oxygen. We refer to those as anaerobic. First, let's look at glycolysis. Now, this does not take place in the mitochondria, but it takes place in the cytoplasm of all the cells that you have. The things that you need to be aware of is that the glucose molecule is broken in half into two 3-carbon molecules known as pyruvic acid. And so a small amount of ATP, two in fact, are going to be produced. Again, we're not using oxygen in this process. Now, once this takes place, these two pyruvic acids will be absorbed by the mitochondria, where more energy will be yielded. And next up is the Krebs cycle. All right, so the Krebs cycle is going to take place in the mitochondrial matrix. And as these pyruvic acids enter in, they're going to be converted to carbon dioxides. As you can see, 2 pyruvic acids go in, and then 6 carbon dioxides here are going to result. And a small amount of ATP is going to be produced, 2 in fact. However, there are other energy-carrying molecules that are going to be produced during the Krebs cycle that will be later be used in the third stage, known as the electron transport chain. So carbon dioxide is produced, a little bit of ATP, as pyruvic acids are broken down into carbon dioxide. And then the final and third stage is where all these other energy-bearing molecules is converted to ATP. Now, we'll go into these just briefly. There are molecules known as NADH or FADH2. And these carry a large amount of energy that as those pyruvic acids are broken down, they're going to now be converted into ATP during the electron transport chain. A large amount, 38 in fact, including what was made during glycolysis. Just because oxygen is available here, that allows for all those other molecules that were carrying high energy hydrogen ions to be converted, combined to produce water that you see down here. And so because oxygen is available during the electron transport chain, those other molecules, NADH, FADH2, carrying a large amount of hydrogen ions, they're going to combine with oxygen to produce water. But in the process, we're going to have 34 or more ATP than we had from glycolysis and the Krebs cycle. So at the end of the day, we're ending up with 38 ATP because oxygen is available. And so when you think about your brain cells, your central nervous system, the cardiac muscle that's in your heart, all of these use tremendous amounts of ATP, which you don't even realize. And so if someone is deprived of oxygen, those are the tissues that are going to suffer the most. A small amount of ATP is produced by glycolysis, and the Krebs cycle, they can continue on in your cells. But without this oxygen, we can't make the abundant ATP that we're seeing here. And so that's why, for example, when someone is deprived of oxygen, let's say they fall under the ice, or they've been, underwater for some reason, and they're deprived of oxygen, that's where we see that damage result in the brain and in the heart, in the cardiac tissue of the heart. And so in summary, we see this glucose molecule being broken in half during glycolysis. 2 pyruvic acids resulted. They went into the Krebs cycle, and they got broken down further, resulting in 6 carbon dioxide molecules being released from the mitochondrion. And then finally, in the electron transport chain, we notice that 6 oxygen molecules are going to be absorbed during that process. They're going to combine with a high energy hydrogen ions that were yielded from the Krebs cycle. They're brought into the electron transport chain. In the process, those oxygens combine to produce these water molecules that you see here. And so the reactants that in photosynthesis you can see are the same as the products for respiration. The products of photosynthesis are going to become the reactants for cellular respiration. And the products for cellular respiration, carbon dioxide and water, they're going to later become the reactants for photosynthesis. And so here we see a cycle of nature maintained by these 2 key processes in energy transformations. Well, listen, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.